Hi, we have a new chapter from this topic, the endocrine system, and the endocrine system. And this would follow right after the nervous system because both endocrine system and the nervous system is a kind of a way of cell-to-cell communication. And in this way, also, they are also trying to regulate, to coordinate the function between different cells. And human is a multiple cellular organism or multiple cellular animal. Any of those multiple cellular organisms, they have many different cells, and these cells need to talk to each other. And then there are several ways a cell can talk to each other. So this is one cell, and this is another cell. One way the two cells can talk each other. Oh, let me draw this out. Is in this. These two cells may have directly connect to each other through tunnels, gap junctions. You may recognize what I'm drawing. I'm drawing these cardiomyocytes. And cardiomyocytes connected directly to each other through the gap junctions. So when some ions can just directly migrate from one side to the other. And like here's sodium ions. Like sodium ions can migrate from one place to another places. And here I'm trying to try something else. For example, this is the cells have displace one molecule on the surface and recognize the cell from the other side. And this is this thing which have sorry. There's a cardiomyocytes. I'm confused. We haven't learned cardiomyocytes yet. Cardiomyocytes. Another way is both cells place some molecule on the surface, and then the surface, which in the top in the notch, the notch signal pathway. When the cells connect each other, these cells will cut the molecules on the surface of another cell, and then these internal molecules go into the nucleus to activate some gene expression. This is only one type of the cell-to-cell connection, and both of those we call it direct communication with two cells. And then another way for the cell-to-cell communication is that here's one cell, here's another cell. One cell can release some molecules out and then be captured by the other cells. And this another cells is being either activated or suppressed or do something else. And one of the example is the local inflammation. The local inflammation, in the case of a local inflammation, some cells called macrophages. Macrophages will release some molecules outside the cells and trace the other cells like a neutral field to come here. And then this we call a paracrine way of the cell-to-cell communication. And if, say, this release of one cell have a long arm to go to release the signal to accept one cell, and this is paracrine is a neuron. This is a neuron. And the neural signal transmission, as we mentioned in the last chapter, is a specialized paracrine. And then next we'll talk about the third way of cell-to-cell communication, called it endocrine. Why I call it endocrine? So let's say again, we have some cell here, and this cell is next to a blood vessel. So these cells released some molecules into the blood vessel and carried by this blood vessel, it can go all the way out, all the way to a very, very tissues way away from the original cells. And not only this tissues, it can migrate some through the blood vessels. It can activate these cells, and blood vessels go everywhere. These cells, and blood vessel coming back, these cells. So this is in this way the signal molecules. By delivering the signal molecules into a bloodstream, these cells can have a systemic effect of all cells. Systemic effect of all cells that can be reached by the blood vessels. So this system we call the endocrine system, and this molecule we call them hormone. So again, let me repeat the feature of the endocrine system. Here you have, they release the signal molecules, the hormone, into the blood. And with the blood, these molecules will deliver to the cells, the distal cells far away, are called distal cells. And this system we call it, and they have a systemic effect. This is the endocrine system. So, and we have three topics regarding this endocrine system, and then in the first topic we talk about the brain hormones. So in the very first topic, let's talk about the brain hormones. So the brain we just mentioned the brain is the center of the nervous system, and the central control of the nervous system. The brain is also the central control of the endocrine system, especially this. I'm trying to draw this. This is the cerebellum, and the brain stem. So here, somewhere in between the middle, these places, there's a small part called hypothalamus. They call hypothalamus because it's just beneath the thalamus. And let me use a different color. Right beneath the thalamus here. And behind the hypothalamus, there's another tissue. This one is lying down here. This is called pituitary gland. So in the brain, these are the two primary region or organ. I'm not sure if hypothalamus can call it organ or is a tissue. They are the highest order of the regulation of endocrine system. And we also learned this hypothalamus also is the highest control center of the autonomic nervous system. They also control the endocrine system. And in fact, hypothalamus, it is the highest control order of both autonomic nervous system and endocrine system. And here, this endocrine system and the autonomic nervous system connect each other in the place of the hypothalamus. And one example, I'll give you one example of this, this connection here is that, so this is the, let's say this is the stomach. Stomach, when this stomach function is to part of the digestive system, and then when it has food, stomach is enlarged, and then when the stomach is empty, when food is totally get out of the stomach, this is called stomach emptying, whatever. And then the stomach emptying itself trigger a hormone called ghrelin to be released outside the stomach. And this ghrelin hormone will go all the way up, go to the hypothalamus. In the hypothalamus, what does it do is that it tells the hypothalamus that your stomach is empty. It's time for you to eat. So this ghrelin is also called the hunger hormone. It tells the body to eat. So in this case, the endocrine system, the hormone is the ghrelin, which is triggered by the emptying of the stomach. And the autonomous control is through the hypothalamus, a regular automatic control to tell the people to eat. So this is the connection of the autonomic and endocrine system. And here, this sample is only tell that how a hormone can exert its effect on the hypothalamus. And next, let's talk about what kind of hormone produced by the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus itself does produce tons of hormones. And here we mainly will going to introduce the hormones that are produced by the hypothalamus that go directly into hypothalamus, directly have function hypothalamus hormones. Function on the terminal effector cells, because many of those hypothalamic hormones, they actually have the effect on either on the pituitary gland to regulate other hormones. So in here, we'll mainly talk about the hormone produced by the hypothalamus to other hormones. One of those is oxytocin. Oxytocin have another name called the hormone of love. What does oxytocin hormone do though? Is the I'm reading my son right now. So you have two major functions during the labor, giving birth. When they give birth, the pressure onto the reproductive tract, onto the cervical, I believe, cervical or vagina. The pressure on the cervical will send a signal to the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus produce oxytocin to let the uterus contraction. That's one way of the one function of the oxytocin. And during the I'm trying to draw breast. Okay, so this, just imagine this is a breast, and then you have milk behind the breast. Milk is already produced and stored behind the nipples. And when the baby, I'm trying to draw a baby mouse. The baby mouse is when a baby mouse suckling the nipple, it generates a signal to send a signal go to the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus release the oxytocin down to the breast to release milk. So another function of this is a milk release. All right. So this one of the hormone by hypothalamus. Another hormone called ADH, or it has another name for it called vasopressin. One S or 2S? Let me double check. 2S, vasopressin. Okay, so what's the function of the ADH? What's the function of ADH? Anti-diarrhea hormone. Anti-diarrhea hormone, which means this hormone reduces urination. Why it reduces urination? You have a kidney here. It's kidney. I'm going to use a different color. Maybe a green color. It has kidney. Let's go to red color. The kidney generate urine, which we'll talk about. Never mind. So, and when kidney generate the urine, let's see. Do I draw? Can I draw this? Maybe I can draw this. This is the glomerulus. And there's a tubule going out of glomerulus, going down, going back, and then to this. This is called a collection duct. When the blood vessel getting in and out. So this is basically a function unit of the kidney. And we'll learn this next semester. The fundamental law is here is that the water, here's a different color again. The water is reabsorbed here. The whole process of water can be reabsorbed. And especially in this, the final duct, called the collection duct, the water is reabsorbed back to the blood from the urine. And the ADH here is the water reabsorption. Water reabsorption from the blood. So, and what if you do not have enough ADH? Then less water will be reabsorbed, and then less water will be reabsorbed from, so let's say not enough, less ADH, not enough ADH. We're causing less water reabsorption. What happened to my computer today? So less ADH will cause less water reabsorption, and as a consequence, if you have less water reabsorbed from the urine, will cause more urine. And at the same time, so if the less water reabsorbed, is more water is retained in the urine, that means less water in the blood. And if we have less water in blood, we have a low blood pressure. Low blood pressure. And when you have less water in the blood, it also have causing a high molarity, means high molarity, means more salt, higher salt concentration in the blood. And also because more water in the blood, in the typical clinical symptoms of this kind of a disorder is that the odorless and colorless urine. The urine do not add much color and smell because a high concentration of water. And I believe that's all of the two hormones we're going to discuss in the hypothalamus, who has their effect, exert their effect directly on the effector cells. And next, let me see. Let's talk about the pituitary. And I think I forgot one small thing here. If say this is not really forgot. Okay, this is a hypothalamus, whatever. And the lower thing is the pituitary. And pituitary gland has two chambers, the anterior and this is posterior. So they have their different functions. The posterior has, actually, it does not produce their own hormones, but rather in the hypothalamus, there are some axon terminals exerted into the posterior pituitary gland. And then this axon terminals actually release hormones. The hormone we talked about, oxytocin and the ADH, actually are produced by neurons, not specific endocrine cells. And those neurons produce this kind of like a neurotransmitter. And this neurotransmitter hormones are released to the posterior posterior pituitary gland. In there, they will enter the blood and be released into the body. So this is a function of the posterior pituitary gland. This is where hypothalamic hormone are released and get into the blood. And for the anterior pituitary gland, this is also called the master endocrine. The master endocrine tissue. What does this tissue do is that it could produce a tons of hormones. However, again, many of those hormones do not directly exert that effect to the effector cell. Rather, they regulate other hormones. So for those regulatory hormones, we're going to talk about when we talk about the actual hormone that has been regulated, for example, the thyroid hormones. And here we're only going to introduce some of those hormones that are produced by the pituitary gland that go directly to their final targets. There are two major things. One, let's use another color. What color we use? Growth hormone. Let's use purple. The first is growth hormones. As you can see from the name, growth hormones promote the body growth, especially the bone growth and the muscle growth. And so actually the growth hormone does not directly exert effect into the target, into the final effector cells, which is the bones or muscles or other tissues. There's primary target of the growth hormones actually is the liver. Growth hormones through the blood go to the liver and trigger liver hepatocyte to release another thing called IGF-1. IGF-1, the full name is insulin-like growth factor 1. And it's insulin because it's called this name because it's very similar to insulin. However, in the evolution, IGF-1 is more ancient than insulin. Insulin is the variation from IGF-1. Actually, insulin by itself has some growth effect of insulin. But anyway, let's talk about the IGF-1 first. So one thing I want you to learn here is that growth hormones, although it promote growth, but it does not go directly exert its effect onto the final cells. Rather, they go to the liver and promote liver to produce IGF-1. And IGF-1 can many different cells, bones, muscles, almost all cells can be activated by IGF-1 to motivate their growth. And this is the growth hormone pathway and how growth hormone is regulated. When does the body know when to produce hormone or when to stop producing hormone? So in the case of a hormone production, there's one thing please keep in mind is that it's always very important, equally important or even more important to know when to stop produce hormone, because those are signal molecules, very powerful. The body need to know when to stop producing those. And so when does the growth hormone stop producing? By the IGF-1. IGF-1 is the negative factor, that stop growing, that tell the growth hormone cells to stop producing. However, does the IGF-1 directly go to the pituitary gland? No. The IGF-1 go all the way to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus can sense the elevated growth hormone, and hypothalamus produce another hormone. That's a name for it. And look in my notes, I had a name. Growth hormone, I don't know. Another hormone to let the pituitary gland to produce growth hormone. And then, is there anything else that can promote the production of the growth hormone? The answer is yes, but it's something, at least when I first learned it, I didn't think about it when this is going to work. Ghrelin. So, we just learned before, ghrelin is the hunger hormone produced by the stomach. So, and then why the stomach, why the hunger hormones produce actually the growth hormone? This is interesting. I don't know. I mean, my guess is that whenever in the older days, whenever you just finish a meal and then empty your stomach, it means you now have energy. You have actual food, energy, and building materials to grow. And then in these cases, they tell the brain, tell the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland to produce more growth hormones to grow the body. And also, there's another function of the growth hormones. Liver is not the only one. The growth hormone can also effect on the adipose tissue. Adipose what does it do to adipose tissue is to let adipose tissue to release fatty acid to the cells. And then it makes sense. When the body feels hunger, it go all the way to it secrete a ghrelin hormone and tell hypothalamus to tell a pituitary gland to produce more growth hormones. And then the growth hormone tell the adipose tissue to release more free fat acid. So that now it make sense, a loop. So, and then this is provide the body energy, which can further, does it inhibit ghrelin production? I'm not sure. Okay, you can double check. And the next hormone, let's use another different color. Maybe like red, peach. Another is called prolactin. Prolactin is another hormone produced by the pituitary gland, and prolactin has two major functions during the lactation period. And one thing is prolactin promote the mammary gland growth. It promotes mammary gland growth to prepare for the lactation. And when human women get pregnant and before the baby's birth, the breast will enlarge. I think I have a number here in my slides. So I don't have it in the summary in the slides. I think 2 times or 3 times. I don't remember the number, but it definitely grow bigger. And then not only grow bigger and also stimulate the milk production. What happened? My writing panel doesn't work very well today. So he stimulates also the milk production. So what else then? And another thing is for the best of a human kid to survive, if the mother, through evolution, if the mother is still breastfeeding a baby, it's better not to have the next baby. So the prolactin, it also can prevent the egg maturation for the next cycle. So basically, there's no mature eggs, even though this mothers during lactation, even though they have the sexual activities at this time, but the mother should not get pregnant during this area because the egg maturation is prevented by the prolactin. And that's actually one of you may have heard it, if the mother have intensive breastfeeding, it's unlikely she will get a pregnancy during this period. That's because the prolactin, the feeding, it's more complicated. It's more like we have one mother doing the feeding, the more like the cognation, looking at the baby, not really a physical or mechanical stimulation. A part of it, but not all. It's more like the connection. or the feeding of the baby produce elevated prolactin, and the prolactin can produce milk and prevent lag maturation. Because of this, actually, lactation period, the woman can produce milk for a super long time if she keep doing this for a long time. For example, in the older days, older days in China, some lady is using this as occupation. Once she have a baby, she continues to have other babies or her own baby to suckling the milk. And because of that, the milk production can last for years. And then she used this to use this capability to milk the kids from the rich family. They become a livelihood for some women. And also, the prolactin production pituitary gland cells is also have the higher chance in the pituitary gland to become a tumor. And to become a tumor, this lady cannot pregnant because of high prolactin, and also there's just no period. So that's I don't think I can mention in the assembly. So, but that is the most common type of pituitary tumor. And I think that's it for the so far for today is the pituitary gland hormones. There are other hormones that produced by the pituitary gland. It's but it's all mostly regulate other hormones like thyroid hormones or cortisol. So next, let's talk about something else in this brain. Some others. This is the hypothalamus, and let's say keep using different colors. This is the pituitary gland, and there's something else on the other side of this hormone, somewhere here. This is called the pineal body or pineal gland. I think it's called pineal body. And what does this pineal body produce is called melatonin. Melatonin. Let me see. Yeah, I'm right. Melatonin. So, what's the function of melatonin? Induce sleep. The function of melatonin is induce sleep. And basically, how does it induce sleep? That's a good question. Why ask them a question that I cannot answer? Probably in my notes, but I don't think it's largely affected. They go through, but melatonin, the sleep itself is not only the brain, the central nervous system. It's also encourage the whole body enter the status of the sleeping. And melatonin and same also in a sleeping status also promote the body regeneration. And for sure, there's some surface receptors in many different cells. I cannot say all cells, but in many different cells, they have their receptors can be activated by melatonin, and the body getting into sleep, they do something else to repair the local tissues. And what's more important here is want to say what can trigger the melatonin production. This is the day and night cycle viewed by the eye and sent to the hypothalamus. So hypothalamus, again, you see, in the future we'll learn more. Many of those other hormones many of those are controlled eventually by the hypothalamus, but not all of those. Many of those hormones related to the metabolism or the digestive system, they are not related to this. They are not governed by the hypothalamus, like the ghrelin we talked about. And then there's the third topic of this whole endocrine system. And the melatonin. And lastly, let's maybe talk about one more thing. If this is a cell and this is a cell nucleus, the hormones have mainly two types. One is amino acids or protein hormones. Amino acid, or let's say not really amino acid, but peptide. Let's say peptide. It can be as small as amino acids, or can be large as a protein, but in many cases, it's a peptide hormone. Or another called steroid hormone. Hormone, as I mentioned earlier, it exerts a systemic effect of the whole body. But it doesn't mean every single cell in the body can be affected by the hormone. Like we just mentioned earlier, the growth hormone actually primarily affect the liver and sometimes also the adipose tissues, but not the bone, not directly to the bone or to the muscles. So how you can determine which cells can be affected by these hormones? For the peptide hormone, they have to have some receptors on the cell membrane. Peptide cannot pass the cell membranes, so the peptide hormones have to bind to the cell membrane receptor to active or suppress this cell. So, and let me repeat it in another way. Peptide hormones exert a function through activating the cell surface receptor. And as long as the receptor in the surface, these cells can be affected by this peptide hormone. But for the steroid hormone, it go all the way into the nucleus, and then into the nucleus doesn't mean all the cells must be able to respond to this steroid hormone, because steroid hormones is a small lipids can pass from cell membrane. You still need to some special receptors or ligands binding the steroid hormone to exert its effect. So still, you need a ligand or receptor for the steroid hormone to exert effect. Although steroid hormones go pass all the way into the nucleus to exert its function. So that is all for this chapter. Thank you for watching. See you next time.